Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Gathering where faith meets vulnerability. I am so glad to be with you guys for another episode here. And if you don't know already, my name is Dr. Tanisha Allen, or you can just refer to me as Dr. T. I am talking about what my near death experience taught me. And I think that conversation is going to be I don't even know what word to use to describe it, but it's going to be something else. And I pray that as I tell this testimony, it helps someone and also how it taught me to really take my walk and my purpose serious. And as if you're just joining, us here on the gathering, we are on a mission to ensure that there is a community for like-minded women who is on the mission to fulfill God's purpose, as well as to learn to be more vulnerable or to give a space for vulnerability and have the same faith, right? We don't really get to be vulnerable around other women, especially black women. We don't get that vulnerability piece of it. And a lot of times we looking at each other side eyeing. But here on the gathering, we want to make sure that you feel free to be who God has called you to be and also grow. We're building, we're maturing, we're healing, we're doing all of those things in 2025. And if you listen to my last episode, I think it was last week, I said soft girl era has nothing about looking cute, looking um fit or having nice clothes or wearing the latest jewelry or having your nails done. It's all about healing. And in order for God to use us to our full capacity in our purpose walk, we have to be healed. So I want you to do me a favor, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, share and let somebody know that we are here. We are trying to grow this community. We need more women over here so that we will be able to share ideas, rub on it. You don't know. You might meet your best friend over here, or I might be your best friend. So let's continue to share. And I want to thank every person who's just joined, every person who has left a comment, even giving me some tips. I love it because I'm improving and I want to improve this channel so that it could cater to all of your needs. So I want to also give a shout out. I think I said I was going to try to do that every time I come on here, but sometimes, guys, the mind, right? I need to take some ginseng or something, but I'm going to make sure that I do it today. And I'm shouting out, God is love 94. Thank you, beautiful, for your comment. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for joining this community. And I'm praying that we could grow together, heal together, and find our place in this life as beautiful Christian women. There you go. So as we jump into today's episode, I want to really just give this testimony, and I really want, as you're listening to it, this is not for a sympathy purpose. This happened, I think, back in 2018, around there. I think it's about 2018. But it has taught me a great deal, a great deal. And as a matter of fact, because of that lesson is probably why I'm even doing this this show, because I probably wouldn't have done it before. But before I get into that testimony, I want to read a scripture. And I'm reading James 4, and this is verse 14. And I'm reading the King James version. A lot of people don't like King James, but that's what I know. And King James be hidden, like, new, what is that? NIV be watering it down. New King James is cool. NLT is cool. ESV, I don't know. Sometimes it be blurring the lines. But let's get into it. So whatever version you like, it's okay. It's in your book. James has not been depleted out of any of these versions. And any version, James 4 and 14 is there. And it says, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appear for a little time, then vanishes away. And let me read that ending again. It says, for what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanishes away. And I'm sure if you've had any family member that has passed away, anyone that's close to you, a friend, a best friend, a husband, a wife, you know that life is short. And we don't just say that for the cliche purposes of saying it, but really, life is short. I mean, I'm I'm 38 years old. This year I'll be 39. And I remember praying to be an adult. And now I'm like, whoa, hold up now. Somebody need to pump some brakes. I'm about to hit 40. But, we just bless God because with age come wisdom. And wisdom speaks boldly in the streets, as Proverbs says. So let's get into the testimony. So I don't know if I said this on this platform, but I was born with sickle cell disease. I found out when I was, I think, third grade that I had this sickness. I've had like little small episodes, but I didn't know what it was because my mom used to call everything growing pains. If I had pain here or there, she'll be like, "Oh, it's growing pains." So I was like, okay, well, this is what life is supposed to be. I'm growing. I'm supposed to have these pains. But in third grade, I actually faked like I was passing out because I wanted to go home. And me faking passing out and they end up having to call my mom to take me to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, that's when I heard for the first time that I have sickle cell disease. I am familiar with sickle cell disease because my mother also have the disease. So, I've most of my life my mother has been in and out of hospitals, had multiple near death experience. So I was familiar, but I didn't really take it serious because I'm like, I feel fine. And not only that, as I got older, I didn't really have much um crisis, as we would call it. I would have like swelling in my fingers here and there, my knees would swell, or I'll have pain. Sometimes I don't feel good, but I was a very active kid, so I didn't really let too much things hold me down really. And I didn't have the luxury to be down for long either. I had a lot of responsibility on me from a very young age. So growing up, I kind of beat the odds because one, in medical, um, the medical theory is that for a child to be born with sickle cell disease, both parents will have to be a carrier or have the disease. In my case, only my mother has the disease. My father is not a carrier and does not have the disease. So in my case, it jumped generation and I became the candidate next in line for the disease. Also, most sickle cell patients, as this medical theory says, are more small in frame. They don't grow too tall, and they're thin and they're more like frail. I'm none of those. I'm actually very tall. And I have not always been this size, but I've never been frail. I've been slim but not frail. And I didn't really have any hospitalizations. There was no reason for me to be hospitalized other than me taking out my tonsils and my adenoids at a young age, but that's it. So when I started to have episodes, it started with me making a confession. And that confession was, Lord, I'm going to serve you for real. And when I made that confession, not out loud, I made it to myself. I said it in my heart. And I think that's when all hell broke loose. Because prior to that, I was baptized. I had already said the sinner's prayer, as we know it as. I was going to church. I was serving in church. But I don't think my heart I don't think my heart really reconciled with what that meant. And when I made that decision one day and said, I'm going to serve you with everything that's in me, I don't care what's happening around me, I started to have a lot of issues. And it started with issues in my stomach. And I didn't have any issues prior to that I didn't even connect that the issues that was going on with my stomach might be some sickle cell issues. And it used to, every month or every few weeks, I'll have these severe pains in my stomach. I'll be double over. And at the time, sometimes my ex-husband would have to like pick me up or help me walk. I couldn't walk. vomiting. They couldn't figure out what was going on with me. And then the chest pain started. Now, chest pain I always had when I was growing up. I actually had an inhaler because uh, sickle cell patients are short in oxygen. So if you don't know what sickle cell is, it is a red blood cell disease. It's a blood disease where most people red blood cells or any cells are circle, and when a sickle cell patient gets in crisis, that cell becomes sickle, and then it has trouble passing through the veins, passing through organs, your lungs, and sometimes it get caught, and that's where the pain stems from. So I've always had issues with breathing. I was always been a little bit more short of breath than other children. So I couldn't run long. Like when we had PE, my mom didn't allow me to do like that. They used to tell you to run for a mile, and then they'll tell you how fast it took for you to run. I couldn't run because I was more short of breath. There are certain things I couldn't do because that is of that short of breath thing. So I started to have more severe chest pains. I started to feel worse. And then one day a doctor said that, this might be in connection to you having sickle cell. So now I have two children at this time, and I'm going through this sickness, and then I get pregnant with my third child. And when I got pregnant with my third child, that's when the sickle cell symptoms or crises sped up. I had my right after my third child's birth, 6 weeks later, I had an episode where they call it acute chest syndrome, where one side of my lungs collapsed. It actually stuck together because I guess there was some blood trying to go through it, and because of the sickling in the lungs, it caused it caused the lungs to react and then close. So that is also another number one killer for sickle cell patients, because of course your lungs collapse. But good thing for me, it was only one full lung and then a partial lung. So I was still able to breathe to an extent. Right after that, I end up having a pulmonary embolism, which is a blood clot in your lungs. And this is where the story kind of takes a turn. So my near death experience have everything to do with pulmonary embolism. So as those years progress, I will have like acute chest syndrome where my lungs collapse, and then a couple months later, right after that, I'll have a blood clot, and it was like going like back and forth. And then there was this extended period of time where I wasn't having any like chest pains or whatever. So I had asked the doctor, they had put me on blood thinners because they realized that my I was more prone for clots. And I asked the doctor, I was like, listen, is there a way for me to come off of these not pain pills, but these blood thinners, because I heard it's not good and all this other stuff. And he was like, okay, how long have you been on it? I was like, well, maybe like 2 years. And he was like, okay, well, try to wean yourself off of it. And at this time, I was doing my doctoral degree in theology. So as I'm weaning myself, 2 weeks later from what the doctor told me to do, I was weaning myself off of it. And by that time, I was completely off of it. I remember um, getting a call saying that I was a candidate for I don't know why these words is slipping my mind, but I was the candidate for valedictorian. Thank you, Holy Spirit. I was a candidate for valedictorian, and I needed to hurry up and turn in my dissertation so that the board could read it and they could choose between. It was between myself and another woman. So I was like, okay, cool. So I hurry up. I finished my dissertation, and I sent it in. And the minute I press submit on my computer, my laptop, I remember feeling a sharp pain in my side. And because I was so familiar with clots, I knew that I was like, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. But stubborn me didn't go to the hospital at that moment because my spiritual mother was having an anniversary and I didn't want to miss her. She was having an anniversary for her church. It was like her church anniversary. She's a pastor. So I didn't want to miss that church anniversary because I promised that I would be there. I will, so By the next day, I was in excruciating pain. I could hardly breathe. I could hardly walk, but I'm just putting myself together so that I could be there for my spiritual mother. And I'm pretty, and that's another story. So I mustered up the strength, the little that I had, to go to the party. My best friend at the time was with me. And she was like, "Are you sure? Let me just take you to the hospital." And I was like, "Let me just say my speech. And after I say my speech, then you could take me to the hospital." And that's exactly what happened. I said my speech. And as soon as I said my speech, I got up and she dropped me to the hospital. I still had on all my church clothes and everything. And I remember going into the hospital and they did a x-ray on me. And when they did the x-ray, I was kind of going back and forth with the doctors because if y'all don't know, they don't really treat sickle cell patients right because they feel like every sickler is addicted to pain medicine. But and if they are, it's because of the system. That's all you give to sickler. There's no cure, so they just pump them up with pain meds. So of course, what's going to happen? They're going to be addicted after a while. So I'm going in, and this doctor guy, he was like, "Oh, we did an X-ray, and there's nothing wrong with you." And I was like, "Please do a CAT scan. I'm telling you, I have a blood clot." So God had it where I had a black woman PA, a nurse practitioner, come in, and it was her shift. And she walked into my room, and I was like balled up in like a fetal position, and I'm crying and I'm rocking because the pain was so severe. I'm short of breath and everything. And she was like, "Why are you here?" And I told them to do a CAT scan on me. I know I have a blood clot. I've had blood clots before. Can you please do a CAT scan?" And she did the CAT scan, and they found out that not only did I have a blood clot, but it was multiple blood clots throughout my lungs. And my side of my lungs was so infatuated with clots that it was killing the lower lobe of my lungs. And so they had to rush me upstairs. Then when I got upstairs, now at home I'm taking blood thinners. When I got upstairs, they started to put me, I don't know if they was upset because I told them the truth. I was like, my doctor said that I could wean off of the medicine. That's why I wasn't taking the medicine. And that's probably why I'm having all these issues. They put me back on the same blood thinners that I will normally take at home to prevent clots. And in my head, because I've been sick at this point so much, I'm like, when I go into the hospital, I'm an advocate for myself. And not only that, my mother has been sick all my life. So I know how to advocate for her. And I'm definitely going to advocate for myself. And I'm like asking for my hematologist doctor because they're refusing to give me an IV blood thinner, which I needed, especially if the clots were so extensive. And I remember the doctor coming in that by that time, the nighttime, and I told him, I was like, "Listen, doctor, they have me on pills, and why would they give me this?" And he was like, "What?" He was like, "They haven't given you any heparin, they haven't did anything for you IV." I was like, "No, they didn't give me anything." So he ordered for me to take it, but by that time it was already too late. Um and I think right after he gave it to me, my best friend at the time walk in to the hospital, and I'm like delirious. I'm going in and out. And I remember saying something to her. I don't even it happened so long ago. I was able to like tell this story verbatim, but I said something to her, and I think I told her, I said, "Call my ex-husband, call my spiritual mother, and call all these people and tell them." And I was like, "I don't feel good. I think you need to call the nurse because I really felt like I was dying." And she was like, "You sure?" As soon as I said that, I heard the code going out. It wasn't code blue, it was another code. But I guess my heart rate started to decline. And as- right before that, I just gave her the code to my phone. I said, "This is the code to my phone. Put put your fingerprint on my phone so you'll be able to have access to my phone." And so that's exactly what she did. By that time, I was surrounded by doctors, nurses, a whole bunch of people, and I heard the doctor say, the same doctor who didn't want to give me the heparin that I needed, say, "We need to rush her to ICU." And I remember I had a fever by this time. I didn't even know I had a fever. I just had all these cold sweats. And um, I got up to ICU, and I remember it being the same room that my father in law passed away in. And in my deliriousness, I was like, oh my God, I'm coming up here to die. And then the nurse who was taking care of my father in law was the same nurse. So she noticed me right away. And it was a Jamaican nurse. And so, we related because we're Jamaican. And she knew of me because of my father in law. And I was always there. Um, Even on when my father in law passed, I was in the room. So she recognized me right away, and and then also my name is Alan, so is my father-in-law. And she was like, "Oh my God." And she just started to like strap me up, do all these things, put me on pumps now, and she had to give me a bath because my clothes was all wet. And I remember she's trying to talk to me to keep me awake, and then also trying to keep my parents, because by this time my best friend had called my mom, called my dad, called everybody that she needed to call, and was like, y'all need to get here now. Tanisha don't look good. And after that, I don't remember anything. I think I end up, they, when you're in ICU, they keep you asleep as much as possible to keep you comfortable. And plus I was in severe pain. um while I'm in the ICU, I could still hear, right? I could still hear, and I know everything that's happening around me, but I'm so drugged that I can't open my eyes and I can't respond, but I could hear very well what's going on. And there were like moments of time I would cry out for a nurse, because I was like, I could still feel pain, even in my sleep. I could hear everything that's going on. I could hear everything that they're saying in regards to me. And then they're going back and forth to see if they have to put me on life support because of how low my oxygen levels were and all these things. And I remember looking at the end of my bed, and I could see these big figures at the end of my bed. And because I knew I was also sleeping and out of it, I was like, I'm dreaming, right? I'm dreaming. And these figures are just standing there. And even though my eyes were closed, I could see everybody moving around me. As I'm hearing them, I could still see them. And I remember my best friend coming in a little after that, and she ended up recording me. But I was so delirious. I couldn't really speak well. And because I was short of breath, and then I was drugged up, and I was trying to tell her about the angels that I'm seeing in this room. Um, and also telling her about some of the stuff that the nurses were saying that was not very nice either. So I'm telling her about these angels, and I'm like, yo, I'm about to die because I don't think people are supposed to see angels at all. Let me speed up this story because I don't want to be too long. So now I get to a point where they were able to take me out of ICU, but there I was in this on the floor called step down. So I wasn't in totally in ICU because they were able to um rehabilitate me to a you know to an extent, and then they put me on the floor called like step down ICU or whatever it's called. So I'm on the floor, and the prophetic in me heightened so much that I was able to, and I was like, it must be these angels, because because I'm prophetic by nature, but like these angels are like telling me things about people and all this, and I was like, for sure, um, I'm not gonna make it out this hospital. But I'm on the floor, and a doctor come in and asked me. She was like, "Do you believe in God?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. I really do." She was like, she's like, I hope you're sure with what you're saying. She said, because there's a girl that's in ICU right now that is on life support, and you are more sick than she is. And you're here talking to me. And we were just debating about if you even supposed to be on this floor or we need to incubate you or whatever. Then, doctors were coming in. I have pulmonary doctors coming in because my lungs was so filled with blood and fluid and everything else, and they're trying to figure out what they could do for me, and if I needed to have surgery, if they needed to drain the blood off my lungs, and if I was even going to survive it, because now that this is happening, the other lungs, my liver, my kidney, um my heart was starting to decline. um so after that, I want to fast forward. Oh, I wanted to tell you guys something. So I'm in the hospital, and this nurse, my mom is in the room this one day, because I was in the hospital for, I think it was over a month. I was in there for a while. So my mom is in the room. This is right after I'm coming into step down, and my nurse came in, and she was really talking to my mom. And when she came in, I said to her, I said, "Do you have a son?" And she was like, "No, I don't have a son." And she's looking at me weird. And I was like, "Huh." I said, "That's interesting, because God just told me you had a son." And this lady broke down, like hysterically crying. And I just said it nonchalant, because, again, I'm like, this is what God told me. I was like, that's weird. So my mom was like, "Are you okay? Is something wrong?" My mom thinking she's in pain. So when she got herself together, she said, "I'm fighting for my foster son, and we are waiting on the courts to decide if he's going to come with me or his other foster mom." So I guess there were two foster parents fighting over this little boy. And she said that for you to say that is crazy. And I was like, "No." I said, "It just means that you are about to get a son." And she was like, "Thank you. Thank you for that." And so I prayed for her. I was like, "The Lord has already did it, because that's what he told me." So the next day, I found she came running into my room, sick me, and telling me, she was like, "I just got the call. I got my son. I got my son." So after that, every nurse on the ward was coming into, mind you, remember, my lungs is critical. My organs is critical. I could barely talk. As a matter of fact, I couldn't even get up to use the bathroom. Like, my friends were coming and cleaning me up and giving me a bath and doing all these things. I couldn't even take care of myself. But these nurses were coming into the room and asking me for prayer and just doing all these things. And I was asking God, I'm like, "God, you you saying all these things to these people, and you have me barely praying for these people, because, again, I'm not really, agile. I'm weak. I'm in the bed, I'm laying down, and I could just whisper to them on, like, my prayer, or just touch them. Some people are like, just touch my stomach. I've been waiting 2 years for a child. Just touch my stomach," and all these other stuff. So I was asking God, I'm like, "God, why are you even doing this? Like, I'm here afraid that I'm not going to make it out of this hospital, but you're sending all these nurses to come in and for, asking for prayer, and I need healing for myself." So this is where the story takes a turn, and I hope you're sticking with me, because I'm a long storyteller. So one day, I'm in the room now with my father, and the pulmonologist doctor, I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah, I think it's the pulmonologist doctor come in, the doctor for my lungs come in, and he had a little list. So my dad couldn't understand him, but he came in to tell me that I'm not getting any better. And he started to get choked up. So my dad recognized that, like, what's going on with him and what is he saying? Um, because he's emotional. So the doctor said, "I'm doing everything possible that I know to help you." And he said, we're the more things we're doing is the more your lungs is getting worse. And he said, there's only two other things that I could say, is either we do the surgery, where they wanted to put a a camera down into my lungs and see what's going on, or they send me home to either get better or pass away. So I heard what he said, but I'm trying to keep a straight face, because my father is in the room and my dad is soft as pie, especially when it comes to me. And I didn't want to alarm him in any way. And he said to me, he was like, "So what did he say?" Also, my dad is very Jamaican, so it's he. When when people have another accent, or in this case, the doctor had a list. He had a difficult time understanding him. Um, I was like, oh, nothing. He was just telling me what the result was of my last X-ray and all this other stuff, and he was like, okay. And then my dad left, and I remember when my dad left, I sat back in my bed, and for the first time ever, I felt like, yeah, this is it. You're going to die. I have a very optimistic personality, and this was the first time that it kind of hit me that, yeah, you may not be able to pray your way out of it. You just need to come to the resolve that you need to get your life together, tell your children bye-bye, because this might be your very last time, or soon. I didn't know how long I had to live. And I remember talking to God. And as I'm talking to God, I get a call from my school telling me that I am now valedictorian, and I have to prepare a speech to speak at the graduation. And graduation is like 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks away. And I didn't even have the courage to tell the lady that I wasn't even going to make it. I just said, okay, thank you. And I hung up the phone. And I said to God, I said, God, the story of the parable of the talents came back to my memory. And I said to God, I said, God, I'm so sorry. You've given me gifts, you've given me talents. And because I'm so fearful, I'm so afraid, I'm afraid of people rejecting me. I'm afraid of messing up. I'm afraid that I wasn't good enough, and all these things. I refuse to use my talents and use my gifting. And I said, God, if you get me out of this, I promise to you, I will use my gifting and I will use my talents to your glory. And I think sometime after that, either the same day or the day of, my doctor, who is my hematologist, came in and he was like, you know what? We're going to send you home, and we're going to see if maybe you just need to go home and maybe you could get better at home. And I was like, okay, cool. And he said, but they were giving me another week. They wanted to watch me for another week. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm going home in another week. And I agree with it. And plus, I really wanted to go home because I was trying to figure out, like, is there any way that I could get better? Because I really wanted to go to my graduation. And my graduation was a 4-hour drive from where I am. And I remember getting home after saying this to God. And I realized that I wasn't strong anymore. As soon as I got home, I took I was trying to take a shower, and I was so weak that I couldn't even turn the knob on the faucet to take a shower, because I all that time I was in the hospital, I was just taking bath and from like a bucket, because they couldn't really move me because my heart rate was so irregular, and they didn't really want to move me, so I had to take a bath in on the bed or near my bed. So I really wanted to just take a shower because I've been in the hospital for all these weeks, and I couldn't even take the shower. I ended up having to call for help. My ex-husband at the time and my children called for help to get out of the tub, because I got in the tub. I just couldn't get back out of the tub and had to go to my bed and just lay there. I remember feeling so hopeless, and I remember feeling so defeated, and also trying to come to this understanding that I don't think my soul was in my body, because I had this outer body experience. Like, I'm here, but I also felt like I was in this dual place. I can't explain it, but if you ever heard anybody that had a near death experience and they say like their body, they could see their body and all this other stuff, they're telling the truth. It was like, even though I was out of the hospital, I felt like I was fighting my soul to come back inside of me. And because of that, my body like me or my person, I was depressed because I felt so detached from my soul. And also I I felt like, why did God keep me alive? Like, I was happy to be alive, but I was also trying to figure out why. Like, I've had so many, this was just the major, this was the biggest near death experience that I've had. But all these blood clots and my lung collapse and all of those were near death experience, but this was like the more intense, where I came to a reality like, okay, you playing around now. You you need to get your life together. And I'm not really with my Christianity, but with just the thought that nothing could happen to me, like I was invincible. And I was playing around like, okay, I'm just going to get better. It was just another thing for me. And I was trying to fight with that mourning process of, I didn't die, but trying to be happy that I did die. And then now I'm supposed to be happy. I mean, let me erase that. Not that I died. I was happy that I didn't die, but also unhappy that I did it because other people did. So I had this survivor's trauma that I was dealing with, and then trying to figure out, how am I going to get my soul back into my body? Like, I was empty, and then how am I going to write this speech? What am I going to say? And it was just so much going through my mind. And then to top it off, how am I going to how am I going to fulfill my vow to the Lord? How am I going to use my gift? Like, how do I get started with that? What that even mean? I have a degree in theology. I know my Bible. Um I was a teacher. Like, I used to teach Bible study. Like, it wasn't the fact that I didn't know. It was just like, how was I going to get started? And that spiritual awakening process for me didn't feel invigorating. It felt like death. So even though I didn't die physically, it felt like something else inside of me was dying. And I guess that makes sense. I guess that makes sense. Because there's a scripture, and let me just pull up the scripture. This show might be a little bit longer, but bear with me. Longer than usual. But there's a scripture, and I really want to read it because um it's going to make sense. Okay, I found it. This is John 12 and 24. I want to read my King James version. It says, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it abides alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit." And I wanted to read that because as I'm talking, I'm being raw and real. So I didn't script this. So if you see me looking through this to the side of me, I'm just trying to think and bring back these memories. But I felt like I died. And so what John is saying is that the dying process was essential for the much fruit, for the bringing forth of fruit. And I didn't realize that God awakening my spirit was Him having to have something die in me. So I didn't die physically, but the old Tanisha definitely died. That Tanisha that was full of fear, that Tanisha that was anxious of rejection, or what people would think of her, or whatever it is, or if she wasn't good enough, or these things, which I still uh to some point struggle with it, but it's not incapacitating me to the point where I'm not doing it. If I'm going to do it, and if I'm doing it, even this show, I am doing it like a lot of people think that I like to be in front of cameras, that I like to speak because I do it well, but I really don't like doing it. I just do it afraid, or I do it leaning on the Spirit of God, because He's the one that empowers me. So if you ever see me praying or preaching or teaching, it's the empowerment of the Lord, and I depend on Him, because I can't do it in my own flesh, because I'm feeble, I'm weak, I'm everything that that's not going to allow me to keep my promise to God. So I won't be the one that hides my talent. I won't be that one, but I'll be the one that uses my talent and double it, because that's what's given to me. And I just want to take that as a break and say, Ed, I don't care what your talent is. It could be one talent. I'm telling you, the more you use it for the glory of God, God is going to. This is the reason why the Bible says that your gift will make room for you. Your room is going to expand, because your gift is not going to hold you to the confine of a small box. After a while, there has to be some type of expansion. So the more you use your gift, there's an expansion, and you realize that, oh, I'm not only a singer. I'm a teacher. Oh, I'm not only a teacher, I'm a preacher. Oh, I'm not only a preacher, I'm a pastor. Oh, we are multifaceted in the in our gifts, and God gives it to us, sometimes one at a time, and sometimes whoever could handle. Sometimes you see people that are have all these gifts, but He gives it to those that He know that He has already equipped them with everything they need in order to sustain their gifts. I also had to come to a realization after this that God protection and His grace wasn't far from me. And I'm so careful in saying that. I'm saying that not to say that someone who suffered the same, like was under, like suffered the same circumstances that I had, didn't have God's grace and didn't have His protection, because all of our grace, His grace towards me, is different from somebody else's grace. And I have 3 children, and I discipline them all differently, because of who they are and what they could handle and their responsibility. And God just disciplined me differently. He disciplined me differently, and I had to realize that the angels of the Lord wasn't standing at my feet of my bed because they were trying to take me home. It was their protection. So everything that the hospital was doing, the nurses, when they were being mean to me, thinking that I couldn't hear them, but when they found out that I heard them, I wrote it on a piece of paper, gave it to my friend, and they definitely got in trouble and had to come and apologize to me. His grace and His protection, even with all the women who were coming in for prayer, the nurses that were coming in for prayer, His grace was sufficient for me. He strengthened me to, even in the time of my weakness, that God was able to use me in those small moments. As a matter of fact, I remember getting sick again and end up having a crisis, and the doctor admitted me, going back to the hospital a couple of months after, and I saw one of my nurses that were taking care of me while I was in the step down floor, and she had a big belly before her, and I was like, "Oh my God, you're pregnant!" And she was like, "Don't you remember? You prayed for me?" And I was like, "No," but it's crazy, and it just it just reminds me of the faithfulness of the Lord. God is faithful, man. God is faithful. And if it's your time, it's your time. But if you're walking in the Lord, and this is where Psalms 91, if you didn't watch my prior shows, I tell you, fall in love with Psalms 91. Nothing can come nigh thy dwelling. You will see 1,000 fall at your left, 10,000 at your right side, but nothing could come nigh your dwelling, because you have shown forth your love for Him. And because of that, He will protect you. He will protect you. He will protect you. And sometimes that protection means to bring you home to glory. And sometimes it means that you have a little bit more time here on earth to do what He has given you to do. And this is where my last point come from. It's coming to is just trusting in God's plan. Even when life takes an unexpected turn, I thought that I was invincible. I thought that they said I had sickle cell disease, you know, that's gonna bother everybody except me. I'm gonna do me. I'm still going to push my body to the limit because I felt like I was undieable, as I always say. And I had to trust that when the tides turned and I became more sick and I became um I came to a place where I couldn't do the things that I used to do. I didn't have the energy to do the things that I used to do. I had to trust in God's plan. And do you know that in that season of sickness, I had the most prophecies over my life. Like everybody was coming to me and like, you're gonna do this and this for the Lord and all this for the Lord. I'm like, God, how can a sick girl serve you? Like, you're making all this. I didn't want to hear not another prophet, I, not another prophecy come and tell me anything about what you have in store for me in the future because I am sick. I am sick and I am here having to write a will and setting my life and my children in order. And at the time, they were very young and just afraid for them to grow up without a mother. And you're sending people to tell me how great God hand is on my life. That's absurd, right? That's crazy. But I had to trust in his plan that, yeah, he could use me with the thorn in my side. My thorn is sickle cell disease. My thorn is sickle cell disease. And I have to process that. That's what's keeping me humble. And that also has me so sensitive to someone that is sick. Like, I will go into the hospital. I don't care if it's to visit somebody. I don't care if it's because I'm not well and I have to go, or every month I have to do these monthly infusions so that I won't have a lot of crisis or a lot of praying episode, or for me, more of chest episodes. So I have to do these monthly infusions, and if where I do the infusions, I'm surrounded by cancer patients. Because hematology and oncology is two in one. And I'm always praying. I'm always praying for healing. I'm always praying for breakthrough for those individuals, no matter how sick I am. I could be admitted to a hospital and I'm praying for my neighbor. I could hear code blue. I could hear code this, code that. I'm praying for that individual. I'm always praying because God has made me sensitive. God has made me sensitive and given me sympathy and empathy over the sick. And if I don't if there's nothing else in my life that I've learned from this whole near death experience, it's that I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust him. He's the author and he's the finisher of my life. And I put my trust in him. He has never failed me even in my toughest time, my weakest moments. I've I'm not optimistic anymore because I'm ignorant to life and what could happen and how we are really just dust, right? And we could be here today and then tomorrow we're no longer here. I'm not ignorant to that, but what keeps me optimistic and what keeps me grounded is that I know that I could trust my father. I know that I could trust my father. I could trust him with everything that's in me. Nothing shakes me. Nothing shakes me. Because after that day, when I knew I came out of that hospital, I didn't have to go back. And after I stood up in front of men and women who could be my grandparents and my parent. Now, I'm a young, I think at this time I was like 29, 30 maybe. And I'm the youngest in the crowd of older people, and I'm like, Lord, What am I going to say to them? These people are pastors for 30 years, 20 years, 10 years, ministers of the gospel, bishops and apostles and all these people in my graduation class, and here I am, little old me. What can I possibly say to them that's going to be impactful? And I remember writing this speech, and I remember also calling my spiritual mother, and I was like, I don't even want to do this. I don't want to say this speech. And then the speech that I wrote, the salutatorian said the very same thing. And she told me, she said, Tanisha, just be yourself. And I went up there and I told my story. I told my story, and I think I called it Code Blue. And I told them about the parable of the talents, and I had to and I reminded them that, hey, just a couple of weeks ago, I didn't even know if I was going to be able to walk in here or if somebody had to wheel me in here. But don't forget that your talent is necessary, and we don't want to wait until something critical happened to us to say, oh, I wish that I could have, I wish, or I should have did this. And I love this little saying that says, the richest place on earth is a graveyard. There are people that died with their talents, that died with their ideas, that died with their strengths and everything else because they were too afraid to do what God has told them to do, too afraid to take the risk and just venture out to the unknown places, or to stare the people in their faces despite the hardness of their eyes, and still do what you need to do. It is essential, and God is going to hold us accountable for it. If you read that scripture of the parable of the talent, it says that interpretation, he basically damned that man to hell because he refused, he buried it, he hid his talent and refused to work his talent out. We don't want that. We want to ensure that whatever is in us, like Paul said, that I have poured myself out like a drink or offering. And he was ready to die. When it's time for me to die, I want to be ready. I want to be ready. I want to be like Paul, like, listen, there's nothing left in me. I have given everything that God has given to me out, and I'm ready to go home to glory. The generations will eat from my fruits. Like Paul died thousands of years ago, and we're still eating from his fruits. We're still using his letters to preach and to encourage and to even learn how to be pastors and deacons and all these things. We're learning from we're still eating from his fruits. And I told God, I said, I want to pour myself out like a drink offering. Let nothing be left in me. At times it is painful. At times it's heartbreaking. But I don't want to stand before God and him deny me because of me withholding my talent. So I hope this episode blessed you. I mean, it's kind of, it's more of a, no, I'm not even going to say that. I'm not even going to say that it's more of a somber um show. This is more of I hope this is a awakening. In all of this, I hope this is an awakening to somebody. There's something for you to do. We all have our place. We all have our abilities. We all have our missions. We all have an assignment. We all have purpose, and your purpose is in him. So remember to continue to join this community, continue to subscribe, continue to like and share. And according to the analytics, like I said, my goal is my goal is to grow this community to 500 people in the next couple of months. And I can't do that without you. So, can you please join this mission of the gathering as we connect with like minded women who is willing to be vulnerable, but willing to heal in her vulnerability and become everything that God has called her to be? And all that will take is a simple click of a button, a share. Also, make sure the notification button is clicked as well so that you will know when an episode drops on this channel. So until next time, remember, Dr. T loves you. Bye bye now.